Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by again and spending a little bit more time with us here at Time to Unite. We're excited about this month's theme. We're going to be discussing the issue of poverty, and specifically with regard to poverty, our initiative we call COPE. It's the Cost of Poverty Experience. And we recently got to do one of our Cost of Poverty experiences right here at our local church in Dallas called Wood Creek Church. And I'm actually joined here today by a good buddy of mine, Paul Fazio, and he is he's on staff here at Wood Creek and helped us facilitate putting the whole event on. And so I just thought it would be a good idea. Why didn't we just sit and talk and just go through kind of the night and what happened and people's reactions after it was over with, your own personal experience with it, and because I just think it's important for everyone to know what's available to you as a resource for your church or your community or even your school or business to really help wrap our minds around this subject of poverty, because it can be so divisive at times, and a lot of it's just because of an ignorance of the subject matter and not really understanding what poverty is, what it looks like in real life, and how it affects normal everyday people. So Paul, if you would just kind of, what was your overall takeaway from that night going through the COPE experience?
Well, we really loved the night. It actually went a lot better than I would have thought. I'd always heard such great things about poverty simulations and how people really are changed by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard about what it was, I thought, I don't know. This is just kind of a role play thing. I don't really think it's gonna. I don't really know if it's really gonna have that kind of effect on people.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the night, what I really saw is people, first of all, really got into doing it. As the role player, the simulation started, people really started getting into it, and you watch them, and you could see as they were starting to make these decisions that they've never had to make before.
Mm-hmm.
You could really see them starting to feel what it felt like to be in poverty just a little bit. You could see them get frustrated, and you can see them working through situations where there really is no great answer. It's one or the other, and both are bad, kind of thing. And so you got to watch them as they got frustrated with that.
Mm-hmm.
I played an employer in the simulation, and as I would turn people down for no reason, or people would come wanting to work and looking to be excited to work and stuff, and I would just basically shut them down and say, look, we don't want to hire you, or we can't hire you. You actually kind of saw the disappointment in their faces and stuff, almost kind of forgetting that it was really just kind of a simulation.
Right.
And then at the end of the night, I loved, after the simulation, we got everybody around in a circle, and we just started talking about it, how people felt. And you heard a lot of people express those feelings and those things that, like, I never felt like that before. I've never been in a situation where I've had to feel like that before. We brought some of our high school kids, and even a lot of our high school kids were like, I just didn't know what to do. It was just frustrating, and whatever I did was not going to help. And I didn't really have an out, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We all work with, most of us people who, especially from my situation, most of us work with these safety nets that we don't see. We always have that safety net that we have, whether it's just families or friends or just the church, that we can always fall back on. But what people started to see is people who are kind of living their lives without this safety net. They really are in these situations where I can eat or I can buy medicine for my children. I don't have somebody who can help me out. So it was great to see that in such a short period of time that you really started to get a sense of what it might be like.
Yeah, and it's a high anxiety level during the experience. Like, the time frame is really narrowed down into the amount of time you have to actually try to accomplish a goal and a task. I think a lot of people, and just conversations that I've had, assume that because we're in Dallas or one of the nicer suburbs of Dallas, that poverty really doesn't affects us in any way. But would you agree with that, or would you say no? Poverty actually does eke into these areas.
Actually, I think it really does. I think, especially where we are in this nice kind of middle to upper middle class neighborhood, you almost assume that everybody is like you. We kind of live in this bubble. And in all honesty, there's a couple things that you realize is even at Wood Creek, there are people that are one paycheck away from really being in trouble. Now, a lot of those guys have that safety net that I talked about earlier, but there's a lot of people here that are really, like I said, one check away from being in a serious financial position where they can't. They're going to have to make some serious choices. And then if you can go almost 10 minutes in any direction of this church, which really isn't very far, and you're going to see people who are in far worse shape than that. The people that really don't have that safety net, the people that really are struggling they don't have a car, they're struggling just to keep a job, they have multiple kids, a lot of single parent homes where it's usually the dads who aren't around and the moms are just trying to, so it's all around us. And there was a time when I just drove right past that and I didn't really even see that. But I've been put in some situations where now I've become more aware of all these people in poverty, and you see it everywhere. Wherever you go around here, you see it. And as the church, the big church, we're called not to ignore these people. We're called we're called to help them. We're called to do what we can. Not only to help them here in this world, but in the next world. And one of the ways we can start doing that is by coming along beside them and being able to help them in their current situation. What the simulation does, I've read all the books, or I've read a lot of the books that talk about how to help the poor. But what this simulation really does is it really helps you to kind of get in the mind of someone that's coming in poverty. Helping to understand what they're going through so that you can empathize with them. And I think that helps tremendously in how we approach the poor, how we help them with dignity. It helps us to relate to them, to bond with them, and develop relationships, not only to help them out of their current situation, but also to be in a position where we're able to build a relationship, build some trust with them, and be able to share the gospel with them and let them know really how much they are loved. People who don't often feel loved and don't often feel valued. One of the big things we bring as the church is we bring the love of Christ, which helps restore value to people just all the way through, not just physically or materially.
Right. So if you could talk to any of your fellow church workers or leaders in churches and encourage them into the importance of doing something like COPE, some sort of a poverty experience where the church itself and even the leaders can really hone into or get an experience as to what it would be like, could you just what would you say to them?
Here's what I say. I would tell them that if you really want a better understanding of what somebody in poverty is going through, even if you've worked with people in poverty, even if you've read the books about how to help poverty, if you really want to start to change the hearts and the minds of the people in your church about how we interact with people in poverty, this is a great way to really help people change their minds. Because of where we are, because of we talk about people in poverty, but we really don't understand. And even myself, who's kind of been working with people in poverty for maybe the last 6 to 10 years, where I've really done it more and more, going through that simulation, being a part of the simulation, still helped me really understand what it's like not to have that safety net, to really be one or two decisions away from being put in a really, really bad situation. So I would encourage any church to do this. I would encourage any church to really encourage their staff to go through it, but also the body to go through that, because I think this is probably one of the best ways that you're going to have to really change the people's hearts and minds and how they interact with people in poverty.
So, as we're getting ready to kind of sign off here, what is just one takeaway you have, that's something that you didn't know prior to going through this? Just one thing.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's not maybe what I didn't know, but what was reinforced.
Okay.
So for me, like, I read a lot of that stuff, and even some of the stuff that I've talked about with you right now, I got that. I got the fact that it's a different mindset. I got the fact that people don't have that safety net, that people can't make the rational decisions that we think they should make. Poverty is not just a matter of working harder. Poverty is a matter of there's bigger forces at play here. So the thing that I really left with is maybe just a deeper understanding of all that, and the ability to maybe empathize just a little bit more with all that, which really changes my posture and my heart as I go and I work with people in poverty.
Gotcha. Well, that's going to be all we have for you today. But if you want to know more about the COPE experience and how to bring that to your church, your school, your community, or your place of business, just go to www.unitethechurch.org/COPE, COPE. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my guest, Paul Fazio, for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time right here on Time to Unite.